this whole innovation thing isn't for the select few. It isn't for silos or people with special titles or that we've deemed having these magical qualities. Innovation is actually for all of us. And what I've seen in the 25 years since is all these hotspots of innovation from everyday people like you and me who innovate, who solve problems, who think differently about the work right in front of them.
Welcome to the My Future Business Show, where we get you in front of your best audience and keep you there. Not only are we interviewing the biggest names in business to help you become even more successful, we're inviting you to book your spot on the show to help you grow your business. So at the end of the call, make sure you fill in the interview application form at myfuturebusiness.com/interviews. Hi and welcome back to the My Future Business Show. It's Rick Nuske and I'm on the line with Tamara Ghandour today. And Tamara is actually very well known as an innovator. She's a business owner and she's a change leader. Welcome to the show, Tamara.
Well, Rick, thanks for having me. I'm very much looking forward to this conversation. If our offline conversation was any indicator of where this is going to go.
Well, for everybody who's wondering what that conversation entailed, it was very much about, current day situations and how it's forced us to reconsider how we, run our businesses, run our personal lives and things like that. But before we jump into the core of the call, Tamara, what I always love to do is learn a little bit more about you, where you're located, what you like doing in your recreational time, if there is such a thing, but also stepping back a little bit further, because I looked at your bio and I read down the bottom of it is that you won a prize for I'll Try Anything Once award. I'd love to learn a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so I grew up in Northern California in the age of Atari and like the first Apple and like the kind of start of Silicon Valley.
Oh, my heart's beating.
Xer, right?
Atari.
Yeah, Atari, right? When's the last time Pong, like Pac-Man, all that. So I was sent to Atari computer camp to learn how to code. And 2 summers in a row, actually. And apparently I wasn't that great of a coder, but I was up to try anything. So I got the I'll Try Anything Once award.
That's very good to know. I like that. That's a wonderful story.
Yeah.
And this is the important part of all of this, Tamara, is that the My Future Business audience thrives on understanding not only the nuts and bolts of running a business, the mechanics, the psychology and all the rest of it, but the story. I think the story is so important. But shifting on from there a little bit, what was the genesis for your first involvement with innovation? What did it mean to you?
Yeah. So let me share a story with you from early on in my career, because this was actually the turning point for me that got me really obsessed with innovation, and not just innovation from the sense of how do we launch a product or create a disruptive technology, but how do we as humans innovate, and do we all innovate? Which the answer is yes, but I didn't realize that originally. So when I was a junior, my first job actually out of college was at an advertising firm on Madison Avenue, New York City. Now at that time, this was 1995.
Mm-hmm.
So at that time, like all the great creative was coming out of New York City. So I was super excited about this job.
Mm-hmm.
And I was an account coordinator, which meant I was the lowest of the low of the low on the totem pole. So I was lucky to get coffee and make copies. But I had this amazing boss named Anita, and Anita thought that I could handle more responsibility. So she said to me, I will never forget this meeting. She said, Tamara, she called me to her office. She said, I want you to head up the big strategy meeting. This is the meeting where everybody comes together and we set the creative strategy for the year for the brand that I was on. And this is where not anyone who touches the brand comes. The clients, the account management, people like me, the people. Yeah, it's everybody, right? Even the people who buy the media space and the people who crunch the numbers, like anyone that should be at this meeting. But most importantly, the creative team. And most importantly in the team was a guy named Steve. Now, Steve was the creative guy who we thought had this magical quality that none of us had. And honestly, Rick, I just felt lucky to be standing behind him in the hallway when he said something absolutely brilliant. I was like, I'm going to write it down and I'm going to execute, right? Like he had the magic and the rest of us just waited for it. So the day of the meeting arrives. I've set up the meeting. I get there early. The coffee's there. The food's there. That's the most important thing, right? Like, is the coffee there?
Yep.
Yeah. So, the clients and my leadership team roll in and they're grabbing coffee and I'm like, all right, Steve's not here, but creatives are never early, so it's fine. Then 9 o'clock rolls around, the time we're supposed to start. Everybody else rolls in. People are still getting coffee, but still no Steve. And I think, okay, well, I'm looking at an old school watch, by the way, when I do this. I was like, okay, well, creatives are never on time. It's fine. 9:20. Creatives are always late. Any minute now.
It happened.
9:45. Everybody's sitting at the table. It's this big conference table. They're all staring at me. The easel pads that I've set up on opposite sides of the room to capture his brilliance are empty. And everybody's looking at me. So I pick up the phone and I try to find him. I call him in the production floor. I call the front desk to see if they've seen him come in the building. I finally catch him at home. And Rick, do you know what he says to me? I know. He says, I said, Steve, where are you? Like, today's the day. And he goes, oh, I wasn't feeling it today, so we're going to have to reschedule that.
Oh.
And he hung up on me. I know. So I thought my career was over. I'm like, this is it. The one thing I've been given responsibility for, and I failed. So I go and I sit down. They're now annoyed, right? And they're staring at me. And I look at the table and I go, well, Steve's not going to be here. So that's it. I had nothing else. And this awkward silence fills the room.
Mm-hmm.
But then, Rick, the most amazing thing happened. First, the person from accounts payable who crunches the numbers spoke up and was like, hey, I've been thinking about this thing. I've been seeing this pattern in the numbers, and that led me to an idea. And then the guy that buys the media was like, oh, hey, I've been seeing competitors do this, and it got me thinking about this idea. Before I knew it, in that meeting, all this innovation was bubbling up from all these people that you would least expect it. And I'm sitting there thinking to myself, something amazing is happening here. And in that meeting, we set the strategy that actually grew the business in the years to come without Steve. And that was very early on in my career, but that was the first moment when I realized, wow, this whole innovation thing isn't for the select few. It isn't for silos or people with special titles or that we've deemed having these magical qualities. Innovation is actually for all of us. And what I've seen in the 25 years since is all these hotspots of innovation from everyday people like you and me who innovate, who solve problems, who think differently about the work right in front of them. But it was that moment early on that really set me on this path.
Yeah, thank you so very much. That is powerful stuff. That's the sort of thing that is hand in glove for the My Future Business audience. I cannot thank you enough for sharing that. Now, I always wonder, I often think about the words creativity. You talked about this Steve guy's name's being creative versus innovative. Are they the same thing? How are they different?
So they're not the same. And I'm going to add the word genius in there and talk about that in a second. But here's the thing. If I ask 50 people, if we ask your audience, right, thousands of people that listen to you, what the definitions of creativity or innovation are, we'll get 5,000 different responses. Mm-hmm. So it's one of those things that means different things to different people. So we really dug into, all right, what's the difference? And how can we define innovation in a way that empowers everybody to be a part of it, takes it out of the hands of the select few? So in the book, Innovation is Everybody's Business, we talk about creativity being the pursuit of an artistic endeavor, right? I am trying to paint or draw or dance or something of that nature versus the definition of innovation that we've created, which is this: thinking differently about what's right in front of you to create an advantage. And let me just kind of briefly break it down. We go deeper in the book, but thinking differently, right? A shift in perspective, asking new questions, a new way to look at something, a different angle about what's right in front of you, the work that you have. I mean, here's the reality. We all know this. We have resources, we have opportunities, we have time limits, we have teams, we don't have teams. We got to innovate with what's right in front of us to create a competitive advantage. And that advantage could be a smoother process, saving the company millions, a new product, a better marketing, a better way to work smarter instead of harder. It's all about that advantage. But for us, what we've seen work really successfully is not about innovation being about a product or a disruptive innovation, but about how we're thinking about the work right in front of us. Hopefully that makes sense.
Yes,
That's
absolutely.
two distinctions.
Now, when you, I think it was your boss's name was Anita early on, was it? Is that?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Okay. Look, if we wind back to there, and she gave you this chance, I guess you'd say, being new to the role, and having that first moment where you get the opportunity to do something as major as this. Does this come back to somebody valuing you as part of a team as well and bringing you up from that angle?
Yeah, so I'm glad you asked that. And I hadn't really connected that to Anita, although that was interestingly one of the things that I really respected about her, and really anyone I've ever worked with, any leader, is really valuing people of all different levels. And here's the thing I'd say, and this is particularly true when it comes to innovation. Innovation happens up, down, and sideways in the organization. And one of the things that I see great leaders and people do is recognize that there is incredible power in tapping the diversity of thinking on the team. And that team comes in all levels. And I think Anita really understood that people with different perspectives, different experiences, maybe even the fact that at that time I had no experience,
Yes,
was actually of value and of benefit. And I'm just going to take a little bit of a turn on this about the
absolutely.
value thing. One of the things that I've come to realize in my life is that people don't need to be right. They need to feel valued and heard.
Hmm.
And the best leaders, the best people I've ever seen in my work across my years and years of experience have been the ones that really understood that and really leveraged that uniqueness that everybody brought to the table and at all different levels. I think we do ourselves a huge disservice, no matter what it is we do, when we don't listen to the people more senior than us, more junior than us, to the total left of us, to the right of us, who
Hmm.
totally disagree with us. In fact, I love constructive conflict because I love to find people who disagree because I want to hear it. I can't think of everything on my own. How egotistical of me to think I know all the answers.
Yeah.
Like I need that. So to your point about value, I think there's tremendous value in the uniqueness of people and understanding that that's a strength and not a weakness. People different than you is a huge advantage in anything that you do.
I like to explore the different ways that we can draw out innovation from each other, from
Mhm.
ourselves. And I often think about my children and how they interact with the world and the things that they do that
Mm.
I often find myself going,
Yeah.
that is amazing. How did you come up with that, this new idea? And do we think there's some value in there, Tamara, about this idea of play and having fun with this process?
Yeah. So here's the interesting thing about play. I'm going to get geeky for a second and do a little bit of research stuff and then get into kind of the fun side of it.
Sure. Yep.
Um, so there's been research done that shows that play opens, like having fun, opens up a sense of discovery. You're more open to new thinking and new ideas. So it's not just fun. It actually works. It removes boundaries that you didn't have before, right? You're more open to collaboration. So I think kids are amazing. I just got to tell you really quickly, I was walking the dog with my youngest this morning in between homeschooling him. I was walking the dog
Yes,
and
ditto.
I, and we were sitting on this bench and the dog was roaming in this open area and he took the leash and he put it down, like hung it, and he goes, I'm going to see if I can catch a mastiff like a fish. And I just thought, who thought, like, what made you think of that little innovative nugget of I'm going to turn a leash into a fishing pole? But he was in a moment of having fun and he was in a moment of discovery and he had no handcuffs on him. Here's the other thing on that. I'd say when we get into a mindset of play and experimentation, our brain is more open and more receptive to going bigger and bolder and pushing the boundaries with our ideas. So oftentimes when I do stuff, I play tricks on myself. I'm like, this is just a game. Like, I'm going to gamify this. I'm going to make this into a fun experiment.
Yeah.
And when I do that, the little chatter in my brain, it's like, don't do it. This will never work. No, they'll never pay that much, right? It shuts down because my brain's like, oh, we're just having fun. It's good.
Absolutely. I often think about, given my experience in the past with quality circles and
Mm,
R&D teams in my former corporate existence, a long time ago now, I often found that there were different levels of innovation, from the hidden behind the R&D
mm,
closed doors through to the shop floor level
mm.
and team level and all the rest of it. I know that you've worked across a major spectrum of all of these types of R&D, but which for you do you find has, I guess, the most potential to bring out the biggest change?
Oh, God, that's a great question. I was just talking about a kind of a similar thing this morning. So here's the thing. So my original career, advertising, and then I moved over to consumer packaged goods, right? So things that you find in Target, the grocery store, like, Walmart, all that.
Yep.
And I thought that those were the people that would be hiring me for this kind of human-centered innovation that I do because they value innovation. I was totally wrong, and good thing, because what I discovered was actually way more rewarding for me. I often work with the people in the unsexy industries, healthcare, energy, public energy, retail, libraries, printing, manufacturing, tons of manufacturing. It is so rewarding because they're starting from a space of not having the permission and not having the recognition that they're innovators. And one of my favorite groups that I work with all the time is this group of engineers. And they're awesome. But, they have been trained to believe they're not the quote unquote innovative ones.
Yes.
And we go in and we do this work. Yeah. Not only do we discover that they are innovative, but they actually figure out how to do more of it in their work and in their life. And, here's the thing about innovation. It's a human thing. We actually all do it. We all have the structure in our brains for innovation. The challenge is we've been trained to believe that it's for somebody else. So for me, the most rewarding groups and the ones that I absolutely love working with are the ones who come in going, oh, that's not me. That's Rick and like everything he does, and Tamara and her over there with her innovation company, but not me. It's so rewarding because you see the light bulb go off in their eyes of like, oh my gosh, not only am I innovative, but I contribute and I have a strong and valued voice. I just have to be intentional about it and apply it. So, I mean, there's so many groups out there, but that engineers one comes to mind too.
Yeah, thank you again for sharing. This is wonderful. Everybody's going to take a great deal of value. Speaking of value, now, I often think to myself, if I've always been, told that I'm not innovative, and then I realize, hey, I've got a spark. There's something about it, and I want to nurture that as an individual. What do you say to somebody that approaches you, Tamara, says, look, I really like, generating new ideas. How can I nurture this for myself?
Yeah.
What do you say?
So there's a couple things. So let me talk a little bit about our assessment, because that's actually why we built it.
Yeah.
We actually built it for a couple of reasons. One was people would come to me and go like, I think I've got it in me, but I'm not really sure what to do. Or they'd come up to me like after a keynote speech. This happened to me once where I was speaking about these very big, grandiose innovation things like culture stuff, shared spaces, free bikes, like stuff that, you hear right on the cover of Fast Company magazine.
Mm-hmm.
And the woman came up to me after and she said, Tamara, that's all great, but how does that apply to me? And for those two reasons, we created the assessment. So our assessment is the Innovation Quotient Edge. Basically, it's the only tool out there that helps you understand your natural innovation strengths, because we all have them. So for me, when I think about someone coming up to me and saying, what do I do? My first comment to them is, hey, why don't we find out what your natural strengths are so that we can actually leverage them, right? It's like taking any other personality test.
Yeah.
You've got this in you, so let's do more of it, but let's do it intentionally. I think Dolly Parton said it best. I might botch this up a little bit, but you get the point. Her quote was something like, just figure out who you are and then do it on purpose. I thought that was brilliant.
Yes.
And that's what I tell people. So when we understand how we innovate, we can understand how to do more of it. It comes more naturally. And I kind of equate it to this. If you go to the gym and you've got the option between a bike, a rower, and a treadmill, Rick, which one would you pick?
Treadmill.
All right. Are you a good runner, or do you like running?
I enjoy
or like
running.
Is that of those three? Okay.
Yes, I do.
Okay, great. So I want you to do at the gym what's most natural and you enjoy the most. If I ask you to go get on the stair stepper, you're not going back to the gym after a couple of days because it's horrible. You're not good at it, right? You've got to fight through it.
Yep.
The same is true for our innovative mind. So I'm a risk taker experiential. There's 9 triggers. The top 2 power triggers are kind of how you innovate. When I innovate in the way that works for me, it comes more naturally. And the only reason people like me or you or somebody else might look more innovative to, somebody else out there going, am I innovative? Or I think I've got a spark, I don't know. It's just because they haven't practiced as much as we have. That's all. That's the only difference. So that's kind of a long-winded answer to your question, but I want you to do what feels natural so that you do more of it. And the brain acts like a muscle. It's not technically one, but in this way it acts like it. And the more we strengthen it, right, the more we exercise it, the stronger it gets. The less we exercise it, the weaker it gets. And the same is true for how innovation works for people.
It's funny because I often think to myself, that little voice inside of our head, it stops us from taking on an idea, is going, Rick, you shouldn't be doing that.
Don't do it.
Don't do it. How do you make that part of your mind quiet? Do you just go ahead?
So I have a whole thing about that in my book because that is real. The struggle is real. So here's the thing. You will never hear me say to someone, just be fearless, because the truth is fear, our primal brain, it is hardwired into us.
Mm-hmm.
And back in the, days of the savannah and, cavemen, it was great because it warned us and kept us safe and made ssure we were like alerted to saber-toothed tigers in the jungle.
Lizard brain.
Now in the days of boardrooms, it plays tricks on us. So there's a lot in the book about it, but let me just tell you kind of one of my favorite tricks and things to do. So we've got this lizard brain, and he sits in there, and his job is to keep us safe and comfortable. And it shows up like, don't do it, it's too risky. Mm-hmm. Wait a little bit longer. Get some more feedback. Let's do some more analysis. They'll never go for it, right? We all have that. Rick, what's your chatter? When you have that, how does it show up?
It's a doubt. It's always about the doubt and the fear. And I often
Mm-hmm.
procrastinate. That's my biggest thing. And I'll often
Mm.
go to my wife and we'll talk. And she says, "You're doing it. You're doing it again."
Gotta have someone to keep you honest.
Oh,
So here's the, I know.
she
So
who shall
mine
be
shows up.
obeyed.
That's right. Mine shows up as that fear shows up as like, um, let's get back to this later. You got to get to this other thing first. So that's
Uh
the
huh.
procrastination. And it shows up as like, it's too risky. It'll never work. Who are you to put this out into the world? It shows up in a lot of ways. I like to think of my little lizard brain as a real person. So I call him Bernard. And the reason I do that is because then I can talk to Bernard and I
Yeah.
can be like, hey, all right, Bernard, I hear you, but not today. And it sounds silly, but it is amazing how quiet Bernard gets when I'm like, I hear you and I don't agree with you. So do I look a little bit crazy sometimes? Yes. But does it matter? No, because he's real. So he's never going to go away. Never going to go away. It is hardwired into us, but I can quiet him down and I can calm him. So the other thing I do is, this is so simple, but neuroscience shows it works, is the minute that shows up of like, let me go procrastinate, the fear chatter is just taking 3 deep breaths. And it sounds so basic, but it gets us out of the fight or flight mode that we tend to get into at these very subtle levels with the work and life. And it gets us back into our thinking brain that's like, no, push forward, push forward. And there's a lot of other things we can talk about, but those are the 2 kind of main ones. And I will tell you, Bernard is great, but not today, Bernard.
Not today.
Not happening.
You get in the other room until I call you back out.
Yeah, I'm done with you
I'm
today,
done with
Bernard.
you today. And
And in fact, I'll tell you on a personal note, I launched something this morning, a membership site, and it happened to me. I was about to hit the send on the email, and my little Bernard went, you should read it 100th more time, right? Like, you should not send this out, or you should just go, you might offend somebody, right? He talked and talked, and finally I just was like, I took 3 breaths and just said, Bernard,
be quiet.
progress is better than perfection. Yeah, moving on. But I had to recognize it and own it, that because it happens to all of us. Nobody's immune from it.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so very much. This is a wonderful call. Now, I often think about the life experiences that someone like yourself has gone through, and I'd love to talk about, I guess, those pinnacle moments for you throughout all of the different brands that you've worked with. What was the one that is in your mind the most, that stuck out for you?
So I had one really profound experience that actually changed the trajectory of my work and helped me understand the second side of innovation, which I also talk a lot about in my book, which isn't just coming up with ideas, but how to communicate them and get buy-in from the people that matter. Because I think we talk a lot about how to be more innovative, super important, big part of my book. But it's also important to understand, how do we then communicate those ideas in a way that gets momentum and doesn't get them shut down. So, and this was it was one of those experiences that it just sticks with you. So here's basically what happened. A couple of years ago, I was hired by the biggest global baby care company to reinvent baby care. And I was so excited. I mean, this is like the opportunity of a lifetime. At the time, baby care, if you think about it, like baby powder, baby shampoo, like it just hadn't seen innovation in so long. So I assembled the most amazing crack A player team. For 6 months, we played with baby toys. We checked out formulas. We talked to dads, which was the first time in this company's history when it happened. And after that, we came up with a range of products that was going to take them into the future. I mean, right, these were close in, like leverage the manufacturing line and the products they had. Further out, things that would push them, they'd have to acquire. Like, I was so proud. So we fly out to headquarters, and my team and I shuffle into the CEO's headquarters and into his conference room. And it was one of those rooms. Have you been in this room? It has like the big wood table that takes up most of the room.
Oh, yes.
And then the bad squeaky pastel chairs that have been there since 1970 or something. And I'll never forget, on the wall were all these oil paintings of CEOs past, and none of them are smiling, and they're all staring at you. Oh, it's horrible. But my team and I are up at the podium, and we've got our beautiful PowerPoint presentation going, and everybody's there, right? It's my clients to my right, and then his boss next to him, and then the VP of this department, the head of that department. They're all there, and my team is going through the ideas, and I'm like a mama bear. I'm beaming with pride. These ideas are brilliant, and not because I came up with them. It was because of the research, because of my team. Like, I was just so proud. But as they're talking, I start to hear this chatter to my right, this whispering. And I look over and it's my client's boss. Now, here's the embarrassing part about it. I don't remember his name, but I can tell you that his mustache was so big that it moved when he spoke, so I could see it coming. So I looked over. So, at every turn he's going, didn't we try that a couple of years ago and R&D shelved it? Didn't a competitor look into that and it failed? Didn't another consultant give us that idea and we decided we didn't like it? He squashed the life out of every idea. And I'm sure you've been in one of those meetings where
Oh,
you're up there
yes.
thinking, yeah, we're like, doesn't my brilliance shine through? What is the problem here, right? Don't my ideas kind of speak on their own? And that was the longest, angriest plane ride home I think I've ever had. And I went through the 12 steps of rage, although I start with 7 because I'm kind of an extreme person sometimes. And I started with Mustache Man. And I was like, oh, how dare he? Jaded. Like, obviously, he should not be involved in innovation. When I got this plan, I'm going to call and tell him that he should be fired. And then I moved on to my client. I was like, well, if he can't manage his internal team and drive like innovation forward, then he shouldn't be leading innovation projects. When I get off this plane, I'm going to call him and tell him he should be fired. And then I moved on to my poor team. I was like, oh my God, they snowed one over on me. They knew these ideas were bad. They fooled me. I'm going to fire them all before we get to baggage claim. It was horrible. Fortunately for everybody, it was a long plane ride home. And by the time we landed back in Denver, where I live, I realized who was really at fault. And Rick, you're probably laughing because you see it. It was me. So here's the thing. And this is why the experience was so transformative. 2 things came out of this. First of all, I realized, oh my God, I was the problem. Here's the thing. My team and I and my client, we had spent 6 months thinking about the work, pushing limits, trusting on new ideas, trying to be innovative. And then we shuffled into this room and we expected these other people who were not involved in the journey we had been involved in to get it. And there we were with our beautiful PowerPoint presentation, thinking the ideas stood on their own, and they didn't. No, ideas never do. You've got to get people along for the journey, but we were pushing our brilliance on them. And in that moment, I realized a couple things. One is, if you want people to innovate, you got to get them to understand how they're innovators first. This team was too jaded. They didn't see it because they'd been bogged down and didn't see themselves as innovators. So they did what we do as humans. They yes-butted everything because that's our human nature. And I also discovered that if you change your language, you change your outcomes. So if you don't push your brilliance onto people, but if you bring them along for the journey, you can get them to unlock and open up and understand the brilliance in your ideas and at least get the conversation going. If you want me to share kind of how we do that, I can give you one, or your listener and audience,
Sure,
one
that'd be
tip.
wonderful.
Kind of how, yeah. So let me give you an example. This is one I often share with groups. So I don't have a water bottle in it, so I'm going to use this mug. So let's say I have this idea, right? And it's to make this mug better. And you know what? It's a coffee mug, but it keeps the coffee warm. And this is on the fly, so go with me. And it reads my thumb. Reads my thumbprint. Yeah. So it knows what vitamins I need, and it puts them in there, and it automatically like mixes the cream every time it starts to cluster. Here's what we normally do. What do you think? Right, silence. Perfect. Thank you, Rick. That was great. You're like, meh.
I'm a professional.
You're like, I don't know, Tamara.
I mean, what are you talking about?
Yeah, but that's exactly what happens. Here's what I did. When we first of all, when we think that our idea is going to stand on its own, and then we push it on them, and then end it with, what do you think? What happens next? Any feedback? Any questions? What we're actually doing is forcing people into an up or down vote. They're either going to love it or they're going to hate it. And 99% of the time, they're going to hate it because we're humans and we're resisting change. So, and that's what I'm doing. I'm pushing my brilliance on you, and now you're resisting change. So what I learned to do, and the mistake that I made back in that story I was sharing, is I've learned to change my language so that I get people along for the journey with me. So I'm not pushing my brilliance. I'm pulling them with me, and I'm getting their wheels turning. So here's how it works. So when I'm talking to someone, I'll be like, oh, here's my idea. Like, here's my mug. It does all these things. Hey, Rick, what would you do to strengthen the idea?
You're asking.
So now,
yeah.
I'm asking a question that forces you to be more open in your thinking and to come along the journey with me. Or I might ask something like, hey, what does this idea need to include to even work for you? Like, let somebody else tell you. None of us have all the answers. My favorite, because this is for the like total analyticals who are like, pew, pew, pew. And I know this because I used to be married to one, and I'd come home and I'd be like, babe, I have the best idea. And he'd be like, hole, I see all the holes. And I'd be like, okay, never mind. But
thanks for that.
Yeah, thanks, buddy. But But we need those people. Those people see the things that we don't see. That's
Hmm.
the reality. So for them, because we have those, we all have those in our lives, I say to them, hey, here's my idea. Hey, what holes do you see and how would you fill them? So now I'm leveraging the fact they see the things I don't see. So it's about navigating the conversation in a way that gets people on board.
Hmm.
But if you change your language, you can truly change your outcome and you can get people open to the innovation that you're trying to move forward.
Yeah, that what I took from that, Tamara, is
Yeah.
inclusion and stakeholder buy-in is just paramount to
Yes.
success, isn't it?
Yep.
And obviously asking questions and making this a two-way dialogue.
Yeah, absolutely. And, we, unfortunately, I think sometimes we don't do that out of ego and fear. Because if I open it up to you, there's a chance that you say to me, I really don't like how that one thing works. And this is whatever idea we're pushing forward matters to us personally, whether it's work, life, it's personal. Like it just is what it is. But that's how we move the idea forward. And that's how we get buy-in. And that's how we get people to even hear us in the conversation without putting up their brick walls and their resistors right away. And
Hmm.
it's a very human way to move forward. As obvious as that might sound, the idea doesn't work on its own. You need other people. And none of us can work in a silo, can we? I
No.
mean, that's the reality. Even if you're a solopreneur, you need other people, you need clients. So when I'm talking to a potential client about a new business proposal, I don't know, at the end go, what do you think? I say, all right, so Rick, now that you've seen what I'm outlining, what would you do to strengthen it? Because you know what? They probably have a piece of information that I don't yet know. And I need to have that conversation with them. And if it's all good, it's all good. But I would rather open up the conversation and get people on board with me versus trying to just make everything a yes or no. And
And
I think
that,
that's the mistake we make.
I love this conversation. It's right up my alley. It's something I've always loved talking about. I wonder,
Mm.
have you seen times where great innovation has come about by mistake?
Oh, I mean, there are so many mistakes that turn into great innovation. I think one of the best ones is the Post-it note. I mean, technically speaking, it was a failure. They were looking for a strong adhesive, and
Hmm.
it turned into a good one. Laundry detergent was a mistake. There are so many. There are so many brilliant examples of mistakes. The Slinky was a mistake. God, I mean, I could go on, and
Yep.
I share some of them in the book. But here's the thing about mistakes. I think oftentimes we look at them and we go, well, that didn't work. And then we wrap it up in a pretty bow and we put it on the failure shelf and then we never speak of it again. But there's opportunity in a lot of mistakes. And I think, I'm glad you asked that question because I think what turned those into the innovation wasn't just the mistake. It was because the person behind it went, I think there's something in that I hadn't considered before. They were solving a whole different problem.
Hmm.
So like the Slinky, that was on a Navy ship. That was a commander trying to solve the problem of like nuts and bolts on the moving ship. Something fell off, it bounced, and it turned into the Slinky,
It's,
which we can all thank for today.
it's amazing, isn't it? It's
Oh, yeah.
just as nature is amazing. I often see
Yes.
design R&D evolve products and services through nature. Have you had any involvement
Yeah.
with that?
So we've sometimes used something you probably are familiar with called biomimicry, right?
Mm.
Which is where we get inspiration from the way Mother Nature solves things. And there have been a million different kind of examples of that over time. And like building architecture has taken from how anthills kind of create cool airflow
Hmm.
to try to minimize air conditioning. Here's the cool part about Mother Nature. It's funny. I have a little I won't go on my soapbox because we only have so much time, but I love it because I think Mother Nature has so many lessons for us. And I will tell you, one of the things that's awesome about Mother Nature is she is the most diverse ecosystem out there. And in her mini ecosystem, same thing, super diverse with plants and wildlife and things that balance each other and contrast each other. And to me, that's a brilliant thing of life. The ecosystems in nature that thrive are the ones that are the most diverse. So when we look at our lives, if we, to our original conversation, tap the power of diversity of thinking around us, we're borrowing from Mother Nature. That is her lesson. She's also, by the way, ruthless about when things don't work. She moves on. And I think there's a lot of experimentation in nature too. So I think kind of on a very simplistic level, you can figure out architecture by looking at ants. You can figure out how to prioritize your day by looking at animals and wolf packs. I mean, we could go on. We should just do a brainstorm session on
Oh
that alone.
yeah, Absolutely. You can tell that this could be a very long conversation, and one that I would
Yeah.
be very happy to have, because it's a very, I guess it's an omnipresent situation topic that we all oftentimes just take on board automatically. We're doing things to improve our situation, our businesses, our teams, all
Yeah.
of these wonderful things. Now, at the very pointy end of the call, Tamara, when people want to find you, find your book, and work with you, how are they going to do that?
So the hub of everything is our website, which is gotolaunchstreet.com. So GOTOLAUNCHSTRET. So all one word, go to Launch Street. And the book is there, and it's on Amazon too.
Fantastic. Well, look, everybody who's on the call today, as is normally the case, I'm going to make all of those links back to Tamara, back to the book. And I just have to say, Tamara, I've really had a great time spending some time with you on the My Future Business show today.
Thank you so much for having me. This was a wonderfully rich conversation.
Thanks for joining us today. If you enjoyed the call, then make sure to subscribe, leave a comment, share us with your friends, and book your spot on the show at myfuturebusiness.com/interviews. And if you're looking for solutions that will help grow your business, then visit myfuturebusiness.com/shop.